This is the Sci-Fi Griot. I'm your host, Nicholas Cunningham. Over the last few episodes, we've asked big questions about the future, about warnings, system, power, and survival. But today I want to slow things down. Instead of talking about futures, I want to talk about a person. Because sometimes the clearest way to understand leadership is to watch someone carry it. Today we're talking about Benjamin Sisko from the TV show Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Not as a symbol, not him as a messiah, but as a man, a leader shaped by loss, a father, a captain who never pretended command was easy. Captain Benjamin Sisko is not introduced as a hero. When we meet him in Emissary on the first episode, series premiere, he's grieving, he's angry, he's tired. He didn't ask for Deep Space Nine. He didn't want to even be there. And that matters. When we talk about Star Trek captains, we're really talking about leadership philosophies. Captain Kirk led through instinct and charisma. He broke rules when necessary, but always with the confidence that the system would ultimately bend backwards toward him. Captain Picard led through principle. He believed deeply that moral clarity, once articulated, could guide any situation. His authority came from restraint. Captain Janeway led through responsibility. She carried the weight of every decision personally, trying to preserve Starfleet ideals even when Starfleet itself was impossibly far away. Captain Sisko is different. Sisko doesn't begin as an explorer. He begins as a survivor. He's a widower, a single father, a man still carrying the trauma of War 359, not as a footnote, but as a defining wound. Unlike other captains, Sisko doesn't step into command with excitement or idealism. He steps into it reluctantly. Deep Space Nine isn't a flagship. It's not even a symbol of aspiration. It's basically a mess. And Sisko doesn't get to represent Starfleet from a distance. He has to manage its consequences. This is what makes Sisko different. Other captains ask, what is the right thing to do? Sisko asks, what happens if I don't? His leadership is not theoretically, it's situational, reactive, and often morally uncomfortable. That doesn't make him weaker, it makes him honest. Unlike other Star Trek captains, Sisko doesn't begin with confidence. He begins with resistance. Command isn't a dream, it's a burden. And right away, Deep Space Nine tells us that this is not a story about exploration. This is a story about responsibility. Captain Sisko's leadership is inseparable from loss. The Battle of War 359 took his wife. It took his certainty. It took the version of himself that believed Starfleet always had the answers. That grief never disappears. In the series premiere Emissary, when Sisko confronts the prophets, he isn't speaking like a captain. He's speaking like a man stuck in a moment of pain. And the show doesn't rush him past that. Sisko doesn't compartmentalize grief, he carries it. That's rare in Star Trek, and it changes how he leads. One of the most important things about Benjamin Sisko is that he's a father first. Jake grounds him. In episodes like The Visitor in season 4, episode 2, we see something Star Trek rarely shows: the long term emotional cost of command. Leadership doesn't just affect the person in charge, it affects the people who love them. Cisco decisions are never abstract. They have consequences at home, not just in space. And that makes his authority feel earned and not idealized. Leadership under pressure doesn't reveal who you want to be, it reveals who you already are. Captain Cisco is often described as compromised, but that assumed compromise is always weakness. Deep Space Nine forces Cisco into a situation where every option costs something. He's not choosing between good and evil, he's choosing between loss and catastrophe. The Dominion War makes this unavoidable. If there's one episode that defines Cisco leadership, it's season 6, episode 19, In the Pale Moonlight. Cisco crosses a line knowingly. He lies, he manipulates, he allows a murder to stand. And then he does something no other Star Trek captain have done before. He admits it. He doesn't justify that destiny. He doesn't hide behind orders. He looks directly at the cost and says, I can live with it. That line isn't triumph, it's devastating. Because what Cisco understands and what the episode forces us to confront is this: leadership isn't judged only by outcomes, it's judged by what it asks you to carry afterwards. Cisco wins the war, but he loses the illusion that leadership can remain clean. That's the warning. Not that leaders will fail, but that system will eventually demand decisions that permanently alter the people inside them. Captain Sisko often stands in tension with Starfleet itself. In episodes like season 4, episodes 11 and 12, Homefront Paradise Lost shows him pushing back against Starfleet because Starfleet itself becomes the threat. Fear drives policy. Security overrides liberty. He believes in the Federation, but he's not blind to its failures. Cisco understands something critical. Institutions don't protect values, people do. And sometimes that means standing against the system you serve. Not because he's anti Starfleet, but because he remembers what it's supposed to be. That makes him one of the Star Trek most honest captains. Cisco isn't loyal to the institution, he's loyal to the principle beneath it. That distinction is critical. It's the difference between obedience and integrity. And it's why Cisco leadership feels so modern and so uncomfortable. In season 5, episode 13, for the uniform, Cisco violates Starfleet ethics to stop Michael Eddington. He poisoned a Maquis colony atmosphere. Starfleet doctrine would call this unacceptable. Cisco calls it necessary. What's important isn't the tactic, it's the reasoning. Cisco isn't rebelling against Starfleet. He's enforcing order in a situation Starfleet created and then walked away from it. That tension matters because Sisko understands something Starfleet struggles with. You don't get to design consequences from a distance. Sisko's story also forces Starfleet to grapple with faith. As the emissary to the prophets, he's both leader and a symbol. Episodes like Season 5, Episode 10, Rapture, and Season 6, Episode 6, Sacrifice of Angels, shows how uncomfortable Starfleet becomes when destiny enters the conversation. Sisko never fully embraced godhood. He wrestled with it, which makes his journey less about prophecy and more about responsibility. He doesn't want to be worshiped. He wants to simply do his job. Sisko matters because he feels human. He's allowed anger. He's allowed doubt. He's allowed love. He's allowed contradiction. He's an African American captain who is not required to be perfect. He is allowed complexity, and that matters. Sisko expands what leadership looks like in the future. Not clean, not effortless, but accountable. So, after talking about systems, warnings, and survival, Captain Benjamin Sisko reminds us that leadership is personal. It happens in grief, in compromise, in moments where there are no clean answers. Captain Benjamin Sisko doesn't represent the future we want to imagine. He represents the future we might actually face. One where leadership isn't about purity, but about accountability. And that's the hardest question, isn't it? What's the right thing to do? It's what will it cost me to do it? But not every leader gets that support. In the next episode, we'll turn to a captain who had no system to lean on, no Federation safety net, and no clear path home. And that's Captain Catherine Janeway, a leader forced to decide not just how to survive, but who her crew will become in the process. That's next. This is the Sci-Fi Griot, a place to slow down, to reflect, and to imagine carefully.